It started with a sound no one ever expects to hear inside a fine dining restaurant. Not laughter, not the clink of wine glasses, not soft jazz playing from hidden speakers. A scream. Muffled. Desperate. The kind of scream that makes your stomach twist before your mind can understand why. Behind the marble door of the women's bathroom, something terrible was happening, and on the other side of that door, the world pretended not to hear. Moments earlier, everything had been calm. The guests had left, the chandeliers still glowing gold over empty tables, and the air still smelled faintly of truffle oil and champagne. Mia stood by table 12, gathering half-folded napkins and untouched desserts. She moved with quiet grace, the way people do when they've spent years serving others, blending into spaces where their voices are not meant to echo. Her name tag was slightly crooked, her apron frayed at the edges, but her smile, that was perfect. Soft. Honest. Exhausted. Her manager, Blake, leaned back in one of the leather chairs, pretending to inspect service. He was the kind of man who believed the restaurant floor was his kingdom. Expensive watch. Slicked hair. The type who snapped his fingers instead of saying please. "Stay," he said suddenly as Mia reached for her tray. "I need to talk to you." Something in his voice made her pause. It wasn't the professional tone she was used to. It was lower, colder, filled with the entitlement of a man who had never been told no. She tried to smile politely, the way women in service do when trapped between fear and professionalism. "Of course, sir. About tomorrow's shift." He chuckled. "About you." She froze. Her hands tightened on the tray, the edge biting into her palm. Blake stood, closing the space between them. "You work hard, Mia. I notice that. Maybe it's time someone rewarded you." His hand brushed against her arm. She stepped back, but he followed. "Sir, I really need to finish cleaning up." But before she could finish, his grip tightened. "Don't act like you don't want this attention," he hissed, his face inches from hers. "You people always play shy until opportunity knocks." Her heart raced. She looked around. The kitchen door was half closed, the rest of the staff gone or pretending not to see. She whispered, "Please, I need this job." He smirked. "Then be smart and keep quiet." He dragged her by the wrist toward the back hallway, toward the marble bathroom with the golden lock. She struggled, but he was stronger, fueled by arrogance and the illusion of power. Her body hit the door, her voice cracking as she pleaded. But no one came. No one ever did. Until she screamed. Loud. Sharp. Raw. That scream tore through the silence like lightning through still air. It shattered the glass comfort of wealth and status and power. It echoed down the empty hallways, past the flickering exit sign, out the heavy front doors, and straight across the street, where a black Mercedes sat idling under a street lamp. Inside that car sat a man whose patience had limits. Julius Grant. To most, he was just another quiet, well-dressed husband waiting for his wife to finish her late shift. But the shadows of this city told another story. Julius wasn't a man you crossed. He was the kind of man whose name opened doors and closed graves. A retired MAFIA boss who had promised his wife he'd left that life behind. A man who believed peace was the greatest form of power, until someone touched what was his. The scream cut through the air again. His eyes narrowed. He opened the car door slowly, every movement precise. The night air was cold, sharp, full of unanswered questions. Julius adjusted his cufflinks, his wedding ring glinting under the streetlight. Then he started walking. Inside, Blake froze mid-motion, startled by the echo of approaching footsteps. He turned toward the hallway, his arrogance faltering for the first time. "Who's there?" he barked, his hand still gripping Mia's wrist. She looked toward the door, tears mixing with anger now. "You shouldn't have done that," she whispered. The footsteps grew louder. Each one calm, heavy, controlled. Blake laughed nervously, trying to steady himself. "You think someone's gonna save you? Nobody cares about a waitress." But the door handle turned. Slowly, deliberately. And then it stopped. Silence. Long. Uncomfortable. Then the sound of a voice, deep and calm, cut through the stillness. "Mia." Her knees nearly gave out. Relief flooded her face, but fear followed. Fear of what that voice meant. Blake sneered. "Who the hell?" The door opened, revealing Julius standing there in a tailored black coat, his expression unreadable. His eyes, though, told the story: calm surface, violent storm beneath. He took in the scene. Mia trembling. Blake's hand on her wrist. The unplugged camera in the corner. The half-empty bottle of wine on the counter. Julius's jaw flexed once. He said nothing. Blake chuckled, masking his nerves. "You can't just walk in here. Staff only." "Who are you, the janitor?" The silence that followed was heavy enough to bend air. Julius stepped forward. Mia tried to reach for him, whispering, "Please, not here. Don't." But her words were lost under the weight of everything unsaid. Blake squared his shoulders, trying to reclaim authority. "I said, who are you?" Julius finally spoke, his tone soft, almost kind. "A husband." The words hung in the air. Then Blake laughed, a sharp, mocking sound. "A husband? Then maybe you should tell your wife to stop." He didn't finish. The look Julius gave him froze the rest of the sentence in his throat. Behind him, the lights flickered. Somewhere in the distance, the city hummed on, unaware that one man's arrogance had just stepped into history's worst night. Julius didn't raise his voice. Didn't make threats. He simply looked at Blake, then down at Mia, then back again, a triangle of pain, fear, and something ancient, justice. Then, calm as a whisper, he said, "You just touched the wrong woman." Blake's smirk faltered. His hand fell away. The power dynamic shifted in the air like gravity itself had changed sides. Mia clutched her apron, tears falling silently now. She knew that look in her husband's eyes, the one he promised her she'd never see again. The one that made grown men apologize before realizing why. In that frozen moment, something else happened too, something quiet but powerful. The rest of the staff peeked through the kitchen doors, wide-eyed, realizing what kind of man had just entered their world. And outside, the rain began to fall, light, steady, cleansing. Mia didn't speak. Julius didn't move. Blake tried to laugh again, but it came out cracked, weak. The illusion of control was gone. The chapter ended with the sound of dripping water, the smell of fear, and a man standing between love and vengeance, deciding which would speak first. Because justice wasn't coming tomorrow. It had already arrived. The lights in the restaurant dimmed to their closing glow, flickering softly like the last breath of a long day. The room smelled of bleach and overcooked steak. The laughter that had once filled it was gone now. Only silence remained, broken by the faint hum of the refrigerator and the heavy rhythm of tension pulsing through the air. Mia stood near the counter, her hands shaking. The red imprint of Blake's grip still visible on her wrist. She didn't want to cry. Not here, not in front of him. But humiliation burned through her skin like fire. Blake leaned lazily against the counter, arms crossed, his lips curling into that smirk that always made her stomach twist. "You think you're special," he said, his tone casual but venomous. "You're just lucky we let you serve here. You should be thanking me for even keeping you on." His words dripped arrogance. He'd said similar things before, but never after dragging her across a hallway. Tonight was different. He knew it. She knew it. "I just want to go home," Mia whispered, her voice trembling. Blake chuckled, mocking her tone. "Oh, you want to go home now? After making a scene? After disrespecting your manager?" He took a step forward. "You think your tears scare me?" Mia's breathing quickened. "Please, Mr. Blake. I need this job. I've done everything you asked. I just—" "Then prove it," he interrupted, leaning closer, his breath warm with whiskey. For a second, the room felt smaller. The air heavier. She backed away, bumping into a metal shelf. Plates rattled. Somewhere in the back, the kitchen door creaked open, just slightly, then shut again. Someone had seen. Someone had chosen silence. And then, the sound. The slow, deep creak of the front door opening. Blake froze. His brows furrowed. He turned his head toward the dark hallway that led to the entrance. "Who's there?" he barked, his tone sharp but uncertain. No answer. Just footsteps. Steady. Calm. A rhythm that didn't belong to a nervous employee or a drunk customer. The kind of walk that carried purpose. Power. The figure emerged from the shadows, tall, broad-shouldered, wrapped in a black coat still dripping from the rain outside. Julius Grant. Mia's eyes widened, her body stiffening as he stepped into the soft glow of the overhead lights. His face was unreadable. His expression calm, too calm. Only his eyes betrayed what lived beneath that silence. Fury. Not the loud kind. The controlled kind. The kind that came from men who didn't make threats, they made decisions. Blake looked him up and down, sizing him up like he did every man who wasn't wearing a suit. "Who the hell are you?" he asked, forcing a smirk. "We're closed. Staff only." Julius didn't answer. He walked toward the counter slowly, his footsteps echoing through the quiet room. He removed his coat carefully, folded it over a chair, and adjusted his sleeves. His movements were deliberate, almost ceremonial. Mia whispered, "Julius, please, let's just go." Her voice cracked. He didn't look at her. Not yet. His gaze was locked on Blake. Blake laughed, the nervous kind. "Oh, I get it. You're the husband." He looked at Mia. "You brought your man here to play hero?" He stepped forward, puffing his chest. "Listen, janitor. I run this place. She works for me. So unless you're here to mop the floors, you can turn right back around." The words hung in the air for a moment. Then Julius finally spoke, his tone low, even. "You run this place?" Blake grinned, mistaking calm for fear. "That's right. My restaurant. My rules. And I don't appreciate outsiders coming in here, making trouble. Especially people who don't understand how this business works." Julius's eyes flicked toward the corner where the security cameras hung, unplugged, their red lights dark. His jaw tightened. He said nothing, but the message in his silence was clear. Mia took a step toward him. "Julius, please," she whispered. "It's not worth it." But Julius's silence was no longer peace, it was patience. Thin, breaking patience. Blake smirked again, emboldened by the lack of response. "What's the matter? You gonna cry too?" He tapped Mia's chin with his finger, that same cruel gesture that had started all of this. "She's good at crying. Not much else." And that was it. The air changed. The room itself seemed to shrink under the weight of that single action. Julius finally raised his head. His voice came out soft but carried through the air like a blade. "You just touched a woman whose name you're not worthy to say." Blake blinked. The smirk slipped. "What did you just—" "You heard me," Julius interrupted, his voice steady, unwavering. "And now I need you to listen very carefully." The lights flickered again, as if the building itself sensed what was coming. In the kitchen, two of the younger servers peeked through the swinging door. One whispered, "That's her husband." The other whispered back, "No, that's Julius Grant." And suddenly, the staff who'd been silent began to understand who they were dealing with. Blake noticed their eyes, their whispers. He frowned. "What are you all staring at?" "Back to work." But no one moved. Julius stepped closer, his face inches from Blake's now. "You think because she wears an apron, she's less than you?" he asked quietly. "You think because you sign her paycheck, you own her dignity?" Blake tried to laugh, but his throat was dry. "You don't scare me." Julius smiled faintly. "I don't have to." The silence that followed was unbearable. Every sound in the room, the dripping faucet, the hum of the freezer, the faint ticking of Blake's expensive watch, grew louder. Time itself seemed to hold its breath. Then Mia spoke, her voice soft but firm. "Please, Julius, let's just go home." Her words cracked through his anger like light through a storm. He turned to her, and for the first time that night, his eyes softened. The fury dimmed, replaced by pain. He nodded slightly, as if reminding himself that peace was a promise he'd made for her. But as he turned to leave, Blake muttered under his breath, "That's right. Walk away. Like every coward who—" The sound of a chair scraping across the floor cut him off. Julius's hand pressed down on the counter, the wood creaking beneath his grip. He didn't move closer, didn't have to. He just looked at him. One long, quiet stare that made the color drain from Blake's face. "You talk too much," Julius said softly. And then, as quickly as it began, he walked out, coat over his arm, calm restored. But that calm wasn't safety. It was warning. A storm before the thunder. Blake exhaled shakily, trying to laugh it off, but no one joined him. The staff's eyes followed Julius as he disappeared into the night, and deep down, Blake felt something he hadn't felt in years: fear. Because something about that man's silence promised one thing: this wasn't over. The rain outside hadn't stopped. It fell steady against the restaurant's wide glass windows, blurring the neon lights of the city into soft streaks of color. Inside, Blake paced back and forth behind the counter, muttering curses under his breath. He told himself the man was bluffing. Just some overprotective husband trying to play tough. "Nobody scares me," he whispered to himself, but his hands trembled as he straightened his tie. The other staff avoided his gaze, moving quietly, cleaning nervously, pretending everything was fine. But it wasn't. Something heavy still lingered in the air, like a storm that refused to pass. Then the front door swung open.